Alright, hello and welcome to the TheSageOfTarn Alpha version 0.497, April 2023. So to follow up on last time, I did a lot of design work, a lot of cleaning up of the project, a lot of documentation and all that sort of jazz. And moving into this month here, what I wanted to work on was to make one of each item type that I described in the design document last time, as well as sorting out the collision thing that I mentioned, which is essentially to prevent like multiple collisions instead, that sort of stuff. So of course, naturally, I started doing something else entirely, just a little side project, which was that I wanted to add keyboard and mouse controls finally, which worked pretty well, except for a little snag in the design. It went sort of like this. First, once you add the keyboard and mouse controls, you have to think about not only the design of how it feels on controller to play, but also how it feels on keyboard, and ideally making sure that both of those don't deviate so much that one of them becomes the dominant choice. Which posed a problem, because on keyboard and mouse you could run to the left, let's say, while holding the mouse to the right of the character and shoot backwards, which is not something you'd be able to do on controller at the current moment, because the left stick is the one that's used for the choice of where you aim. Long story short, I ended up removing the camera, experimented a little bit with the right stick, and trying to make sort of a dual stick option for the controller to make it similar to how it would be on keyboard and mouse, only to then realize that it was so unintuitive that it had to go immediately, and I reintroduced the cam so you could, look around and all that sort of stuff. And then I added a simple shot timer delay. What that means, if I can, maybe that's why I didn't. There we go. Which basically means that when we are walking around like this, right now, there's nothing that stops the character when I shoot, so I can still sort of cheese a little bit, but let me say it like this. I click now, and 1 second later, it actually fires. Before, it would fire instantly. This is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, we can switch to another state. That will mean that as you click the button, character will stop for a moment. You'll get the time, a little bit of time to aim. I think it's like half a second at the moment, because a second felt slow, weirdly enough. It also allows us, for any additions and mobs that we add to the character, or when you add shots and stuff like that, and you can add them to have different throw timings. Is it something that winds up for a long time before it throws, or is it something that almost fires instantly? There could be a difference in how those things feel to play with. Associated with this, let me just do this. We'll start another one so we refresh all the small guys. Additionally, in addition to that, the next bit of thing to work on was, of course, then another thing entirely as well, which is in here, in the inventory, you might notice that it says object U1 over here. This is the equivalent to this guy, our little boy. He's also not thrown out anymore. And the reason we're talking about menu linking is because I've gone in here now. There's no visual indications here, but up is the new one, that one, and down is the player, because you can actually do that too, and it gets a little weird. Okay, so let's reset again to not make too much of a confusion here. And let's just see here. So unit number 2. If we go in, if we spawn a little guy and another one, there we go. We switch to up, and what we end up with is this little bad boy here. The other colored one, if you can see it. This is technically the shot. You can see that it acts a little bit differently. Basically what it has is a simple trajectory movement. It's intended skipping along the ground movement. I called it a pebble, so I thought, what can you do with that? And then death, which happens literally right after there. It just disappears for now. It's nothing fancy. It can damage me, as you can see, but I do take 2 hits of damage, which will lead into what we'll talk about next, which is the adjustments for collision. Skipping out on, or basically making one item, so we now have something we can throw, I felt that was good enough to move on to the collision issue, just to fix that before we really go crazy with the rest of it. And essentially what I've done is I've just updated the air collision and the ground collision for both. So updated to a new version that encompasses a check that makes sure that both of them only runs once. However, after testing with this guy, he's supposed to do, I think it's about 5% of my HP bar, and he's doing 10. And a little bit of investigation showed me that, okay, it's simply because each of the collision script runs once. So I need to have some sort of universal detection for it, or think a little bit about the logic behind that to ensure that that can't happen, so we don't get a double hit essentially. It's a little bit difficult here when it slides through from the top and down through me, like from up here and then down to the ground, because what's going to happen is it's going to go past through my body, and then as it exits it hits the ground, and then it's high enough to actually collide as well, and you get that second collision. But you know, I'm fiddling around with it. Another adjustment is that I've removed, so removing stuff, I removed a lot of unused code. That was all of the unused code basically. Some of it I hadn't done correctly in my sorting last time, so I refixed it all so that it now doesn't, when you boot up the game, initially spawn like a buttload of console messages saying I am in the code folder, which they did before. The intended use case for that is only for them to show if I accidentally use them somewhere, not all the time, every time I boot up the damn thing. What else? Let's see here. Oh yeah, so I updated the collision charts as well to encompass all of the collisions for the worm, the player, and the new shot in between. That's why we can hit ourselves. Everything can hit everything at this point, and there is a logic to what that does, as well as the associated outcomes, which are unique in a sense for each individual collision when it comes to it, but I feel like that's kind of okay. It's a little bit wrangly, the system that I've made, in that it gives you full freedom, which is good, but it also means that you can't actually make any kind of like systematic setup for it, because if you do, there's gonna be like up to 50,000 other combinations that you just haven't put in. So it's sort of like if you start making a system for it, you're going to end up with a lot of code that won't be used. So there's no point making the whole system. The alternative is then that you get one list of all of the outcomes that are just unique and random, and you need to know what those are, and that's kind of why we did the documentation last time. Anyways, it's good to see that it sort of works, but it is also controlled chaos, to say the least. I additionally removed some unused variables for clutter within the base unit type, as well as I removed some of the behavior for this guy's brain. He was using a variable and doing something with it, and it was never used by any of his conditions in any of his states, so there wasn't really any point to have it, was there? Let's see, what else? You may have noticed I added a little bit of a thing here. If you look at the player, his head bops up and down and spins in a very strange way here. This was my testing when I was testing the shot difference, you know, to run to the side and then look the other way and then get an accurate up and down reading for where I'm looking with it. I'm gonna remove it. I'm not satisfied with it. It looks like he's just breaking his neck whenever he does this. Additionally, whenever you're running forward, he has a tendency to end up looking up, because you tend to naturally push the stick a little bit upwards, which means it always looks kind of stupid. Oh, that looks cool. As you can see here, right? It's not looking that hot, let's say. Same thing sort of happens if you're going downstairs and he's always sort of looking a little bit in the ground. So I kind of want that to be neutral the way it was before. And then only use this particular aim, you know, look. And honestly, the whole upper body needs to do it whenever you're about to throw. There's no animation for it just yet, but I'm planning to add that in. Would be fitting in a new state for the player, essentially, with an attack. Right? We also only have the option in here. It is a little hardcoded at the moment, so I need to make a system that allows me to do it for all of them, as well as the separate inventory that allows you to select in here which things should be what. Because right now I just have access to 3 units. Conveniently, there's 3 spots in here. That means we have access to the whole thing, technically. But further down the line, we will obviously be limited to the 5 options in here. So if we end up having more units, you will have to have a choice of what you have and what you don't have in your grand storage or inventory. It's like your active use case inventory is this one, the one you can all of your equipped gear, and then you're gonna have a I don't know, a bag of all the rest somewhere, and all the stuff you haven't picked up and stuff like that. Additionally, we need to look at one of these guys. Let me go in here and switch back. Oops, I switched myself. I forgot. I haven't gotten used to this yet. It's so fast that you need to get used to it, like for real. Muscle memory and all that sort of stuff, which is nice though. Let's not go too far that way. Let's scoot down here a little bit. I want a flat surface though. Into one of these holes should be fine. Without too much ground stuff right here. Alright, let me throw one down. Oh, oops, I did it wrong. Obviously, okay, so look at this little guy, right? Previously, you've noticed them walking back and forth randomly in their... Oh, did you see that? Did you see that he just sped up a little bit? I've fixed them so that they don't fuck up when they have actually had the option to go, you know, Speedy Gonzalez, as you know, he just disappeared. Amazing. I'll make it again. I'll make him over here. Oops. There we go. So now they actually have the option to run. They've had this the entire time. They just didn't have the brain capacity to do it. But now they do. I've fixed various animation state and draw states associated with it so that the movement is correct. It could speed up the legs a little bit more for the running state potentially, but it is fitting with... oh, they're going super angry on each other now. Territorial fighting, naturally happening. So yeah, they're basically able to do it, but I've fixed various smaller issues with it as well. We also had that one bug, I believe. Yes. So I noticed since we have the option, we now have the first unit, which is... oh fuck. There we go. Because we now have the first shot. Let me move away from these guys. This one, right? Bonk. And it wiggles its small arms and then it dies. Since it can die and disappear, which is actually good, because that means that we don't that means that we don't build a memory leak, which I've done all the other times, because all of these bad boys over here don't, you know, expire at all. It means that I ran into an interesting little issue with the anchors, the sections that control the larger sections of ground that we're walking on, which has, of course, it updates the units on its position in case that the anchor moves. If you remember some of my tests up here. Hold on. Excuse me, can I grab? What is happening? There we go. Let's move up here quickly. Remember some of my earlier tests with that pillar up here. I don't think I can... Oh, I can reach it. Where I moved it around. That's the part of it that controls where the player is on the moving object. Was missing a reference whenever these guys disappeared. It's not a very interesting bug, it's just one of those backwards cards. I've already fixed it too, but it was surprising, and one thing I hadn't considered, that in the anchors there can indeed be a situation where they do have something in their list that is no longer existing, which happens in this particular case. And that is about it for today. I suppose the final thing is that although these guys can attack me, which is not really ideal, they can also technically attack the smaller dudes. They do damage to them. But much like the player at the moment, the smaller dudes can't die. So it doesn't matter even if I could hit them, which is surprisingly difficult, by the way. I need to make some sort of targeting system in some sense, or I don't know, maybe the projectiles just need to be bigger or have a bigger collision box on impact. That could be some different play around with objects there, because right now if they're going fast, they're actually difficult to hit. And because of their weird-ass movement, it can be hard to predict where they're going to be as well. This could be fixed either by making the enemies more predictable in their behavior, or by increasing the size of the shot and the accuracy of the angle. Maybe a little bit of auto-aim in some sense. I don't know what's the best option there. I'm going for what feels the best, so that you get the correct feedback as the player. But I still want it to be difficult. Not difficult, but I want the player to feel in control. I suppose that's where it's at. It has to react the way you're expecting it to react. If it reacts in another way, such as right now when... if I can spawn another one. If I try to aim, it's hard to choose or judge precisely where the arc is without any indication. And that might also just be fixed the moment we have an animation for it, so it's easier for you to learn and get a feel for it. But I will definitely have to test it, and I would like some sort of target locking system so that you can at least choose. But I think it will be good to both have, you know, unlocked and locked on. And I'm not sure how to do the locked on version that well, because if I log onto him here, should it then automatically try and calculate where to hit, or should it be in a designed arc that is just towards that target where you still need to like position yourself correctly? Because you can, you know, jump up, start the shot, and then shoot before you hit the ground, I think. Unless I fly too long for it. Kind of, right? It's just before. Hold on, let me try it. I'll show it off on the edge over here. So I throw and I jump. You little bastard, come on. Alright, hold on. I click shot, I jump. There we go. Pointed downwards as I went. Point upwards. There we go. So the idea would be that although when you're on the ground you're locked in place, if you want to move while you shoot, you will have that option too. Of course, at the cost of additional stamina. So it's kind of like a choice. Okay. So yeah, that's about the update this time around. Again, sorry for the delay. I was sick, so the production here is limited a little bit, but I am very satisfied with the progress and the initial steps here to make the first throwable and where it goes and inventory and all that sort of stuff is slowly collecting itself to where I have all what I need, hopefully. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Oops, let's go in here and see you next time. How do I switch back to this? Oh, that's not it. Oh, fuck. Okay, take care.